Personal growth is often marketed as a linear path to happiness, but Georg Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel teaches us something far more realistic and potent. Growth is born from conflict. For Hegel, reality is not static, it is a dynamic process called dialectics. In this first block, we explore the idea that your current state, what we will call your thesis, is not the final destination, but merely the starting point. The thesis is your comfort zone, your current beliefs, and your established identity. However, life will inevitably throw an antithesis at you, a problem, a failure, a suffering, or an existential doubt that seems to contradict everything you are. Many see crisis as a system error, but in Hegelian thought, crisis is the engine of evolution. If there were no force opposing your current state, you would remain stagnant forever. Personal growth, seen through this lens, is the art of Aufhebung, or sublation, a German word that means simultaneously to cancel, to preserve, and to lift up. When facing contradiction, you do not simply destroy who you were, instead you integrate what you have learned into a higher level of consciousness. This is the first step in stopping the fear of problems and starting to see them as the raw material for your own expansion. Growing is not about avoiding the storm, it is about understanding that the storm is the necessary antithesis for a stronger version of yourself to emerge. Your identity is not a fixed photo, it is a constant conversation between who you are and the challenges that force you to change. In this block, we invite the viewer to identify their current antithesis not as an enemy, but as the catalyst for their next synthesis. Without the clash of opposites, the spirit remains asleep. One of Hegel's most influential concepts is the Master-Slave Dialectic. In the context of personal growth, this is not a historical or social commentary, but a profound look into the architecture of your own psyche. We all house an internal master, the part of us that seeks external recognition, craves status, and fears the risk of true vulnerability. We also house an internal slave, the part that works, disciplines itself, and paradoxically holds the true power of transformation. Hegel explains that the master eventually becomes dependent. He is only a master because someone else recognizes him as such. In contrast, the slave, through labor and the transformation of material reality, is the one who truly comes to know their own capabilities and strength. How many times have you been a slave to the opinions of others or to your own immediate impulsive desires? Hegelian personal growth teaches us that true freedom is not found in dominating others, but in the capacity to transform your reality through conscious effort. The slave is the one who forms the world, and by forming the world, they form themselves. In this block, we analyze how discipline, which we often perceive as a burden or a form of bondage, is actually the only path to real autonomy. He who cannot govern himself will always remain a servant to his impulses or to the expectations of society. The struggle for recognition begins within. It is the moment you decide that your value does not depend on the gaze of the other, but on your ability to maintain your own consciousness in the face of adversity. Here, we delve into the idea that working on oneself is the highest form of liberty. Self-consciousness is not something we are born with, it is something we conquer on the battlefield of our daily decisions. By the end of this block, the viewer must understand that their capacity for effort is not a weakness, but the sovereign tool to stop being a servant of circumstances and become the architect of their own spirit. True sovereignty comes from the realization that through the toil of the negative, we carve out our true essence. Hegel famously wrote, "The owl of Minerva spreads its wings only with the falling of the dusk." Minerva is the goddess of wisdom, and her symbolic bird does not take flight at dawn, but only when the day has concluded. In the realm of personal growth, this carries a profound truth. True understanding of our lives usually arrives after we have lived the experience, often after we have made significant mistakes. We cannot demand wisdom from life in advance. Wisdom is, by its very nature, retrospective. This third block focuses on patience and the interpretation of our personal history. We often fall into despair because we do not understand the why of what is happening to us while we are in the midst of it. We want clarity in the high noon of a crisis, but Hegel warns us that meaning is only revealed when the cycle closes. Accepting that wisdom arrives at dusk is an act of deep humility and a powerful balm against anxiety. It means that your current failures are not a waste of time, but the necessary data for the owl of your consciousness to take flight later. Every stage of your life, even those that seem dark or meaningless today, is part of the unfolding of your own spirit. In Hegelian philosophy, the rational is the real. This doesn't mean everything that happens is good in a simple moral sense, but that everything has an internal logic that we can discover if we look deep enough. Personal growth is learning to be a historian of your own life, connecting the dots of your past pains to find the blueprint of your current purpose. This block teaches the viewer not to judge their process prematurely. The twilight of a phase is necessary for philosophical reflection to be born. Here we connect with the idea that maturity is the art of looking back and seeing how every contradiction prepared us for the present moment. The owl flies high to give us a perspective we lacked before. It allows us to see the pattern within the chaos. By embracing the dusk, we stop fighting the timing of our enlightenment and start trusting that the meaning of our struggle is maturing just out of sight, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. For Hegel, we are not isolated individuals drifting through a random void. We are part of the Geist, or spirit, a collective consciousness that unfolds through the grand tapestry of history. In your journey of personal growth, this means that your evolution is not just for you, it is a contribution to the development of humanity itself. This block elevates the conversation from the I to the we. Hegel invites us to see our lives as a single chapter in a much larger masterpiece. Your struggles for ethics, for truth, or for justice in your immediate surroundings are the spirit manifesting itself through your actions. Personal growth is not a selfish act of individual optimization, it is the realization of freedom within the world. Here, we explore how our personal decisions are inextricably linked to the spirit of the age, or Zeitgeist. To grow means to understand the context in which we live and how we can raise the consciousness of our community. If you improve your character, if you cultivate virtue, you are actually improving the fabric of reality itself. Hegel believed that the ultimate end of history is the progress of the consciousness of freedom. Applied to your life, every time you overcome a bias, every time you act with greater rationality and less blind impulse, you are advancing the history of human freedom. This block serves as a profound call to responsibility. You do not seek personal growth simply to feel good or balanced, but to become a more lucid vehicle for reason and purpose in the world. We analyze the idea that an individual reaches their maximum potential when their personal goals align with universal values. The spirit is not something abstract and distant. It is what pulses in every honest conversation, in every act of forgiveness, and in every pursuit of knowledge. By seeing yourself as part of a historical unfolding, the weight of your individual problems is transformed into the dignity of a larger mission. You are the universe becoming aware of itself. When you grow, the world grows with you, and your private victories contribute to the slow, steady march of human liberation. The final block brings us to the pinnacle of the Hegelian system, absolute knowing. In the context of personal growth, this does not mean reaching a state where you possess all factual information, but rather achieving a state of consciousness where you are no longer alienated from reality. It is the total integration of your shadow, your past, your failures, and your successes into a coherent and meaningful identity. It is the moment when you stop viewing the world as something external that happens to you and start recognizing it as the mirror of your own development. You have journeyed through thesis, antithesis, and synthesis so many times that you finally understand the process itself. Absolute knowing is, ultimately, reconciliation. To reconcile with life means accepting that the pain was necessary, that the contradictions were the rungs on the ladder, and that the other, those who hurt or challenged us, was the indispensable mirror required for self-knowledge. In this concluding segment, we synthesize Hegel's lessons for daily life, the active acceptance of change, the valuation of internal labor, and the vision of life as a constant unfolding of freedom. Personal growth is the process by which the spirit returns to itself, wiser and more liberated than when it began. We invite the viewer to embrace their own dialectic. Do not seek a peace that is void of conflict. Seek a peace that is the hard-won result of having integrated all your conflicts. The video concludes on a powerful note. You are the spirit knowing itself through your own skin, your own doubts, and your own victories. The story has not ended. Your current synthesis is merely the foundation for a new and even more glorious contradiction. This is the eternal dance of existence, and to understand it is the highest form of growth. Freedom is not the absence of limits, but the recognition that those limits are exactly what allow you to give yourself a unique shape in the universe. You are not just living history, you are the point where history becomes conscious of its own freedom.